Hello guys, thank you so much for coming back on this channel again to watch another video. So today's video is not going to be a trailer reaction. However, this is going to be a video where I will talk about why Capcom needs to look back at Resident Evil 7 for the future of the Resident Evil franchise moving forward. Now I just want to clarify, I'm not saying Resident Evil 7 is the best Resident Evil game out there. However, going back after finishing Resident Evil 4 Remake, which is one of the best remakes out there, what I noticed that Resident Evil 7 is a very special game which has changed Resident Evil franchise moving forward. So I wanted to make this video and give you the reason as to why what I've noticed in Resident Evil 7 and what Capcom needs to apply on the upcoming Resident Evil titles. Now before Resident Evil 7, Capcom had a massive success with the Resident Evil 4 title. It changed the franchise into a completely new direction. You have a new camera angle with a more focus on the action. Then they decided to make Resident Evil 5, which was another very successful game. However, the game wasn't as good as Resident Evil 4 was. Now Resident Evil 5 wasn't a survival horror game anymore. Now from the start of the game, you get the feel that the game is no longer a horror game. Your Chris Redfield is not the same Chris Redfield you knew from Resident Evil 1. And if focus on the blockbuster side of things, your character feels more like a superhero in this universe. And you get to see your fan favorite characters just like Jill, Chris, Albert Wesker, and then you had the typical boss fights, and the game plays just like a typical blockbuster movie rather than a survival horror Resident Evil title. Now the game was average to good if you forget about the title as a Resident Evil, because if you play with your friend it was quite fun to play, especially with the co-op. However, you can see the pattern now. Capcom has completely shifted their focus from a survival horror aspect to a more action-oriented Resident Evil games. And then we had Resident Evil 6. Critics hated that game, and that game didn't make as much money which they were expecting from Resident Evil 6. Then obviously in between they also had those action offshoot Resident Evil games, same again, action focus rather than survival horror. So at that point Capcom decided to go back to its roots and reevaluate what Resident Evil franchise was known for, and they completely wanted to overhaul Resident Evil franchise. So they started working on Resident Evil 7, and then they dropped a trailer for Resident Evil 7 with a brand new demo. And in this demo you played this protagonist trapped in this mansion which feels very claustrophobic, and due to RE engine the game felt real. People praised the demo and they got so excited for the upcoming Resident Evil 7 title. And with Resident Evil 7, Capcom completely went with a bold new direction for the franchise. It was a breath of fresh air, and people got really excited for this title because it's not your traditional Resident Evil anymore. It felt more in line with PT, which people were looking forward to. Now when you load up the demo and you play it, you realize the very first thing you notice that the camera angle has now changed to first person's perspective. And with the RE engine, the game felt very immersive because this time around you are looking at this mansion which is beautifully presented in front of you. Now when you play Resident Evil 7, you can feel that immersion throughout the entirety of this game. And the game was beautifully crafted with so much love and passion this time around that every single small detail in the game matters to your character. You can just stand in one corner and you can observe the scene around you. You're reading small notes in the kitchen area, in the dining area, and that's what Capcom was missing with the Resident Evil games before. The game has a mystery to it this time around. Your main protagonist, who goes to this Dulvey mansion to save his wife, she turned out to be the one who's trying to attack you and trying to kill you. And when you think you kill Mia, you get knocked down by Jack Baker. And then you got dragged into this brand new mansion which is your Baker's mansion. And from that point onward, you completely left on your own to explore and survive the survival horror of Resident Evil 7, which goes back to the primal fear of the unknown. The game gives you the freedom to explore because The resource management is very important in this game, and every small thing could be a matter of life and death. However, while you're exploring, you also constantly getting chased by Jack Baker, who's constantly after you, constantly chasing you, trying to interrupt you, keeping you on your toes, while at the same time you're trying to find things to survive. The genuine scare in that game, because it doesn't rely on cheap jump scares. You actually felt terrified because there is this main antagonist who's keep taunting you, while at the same time you're trying to explore and trying to find things and trying to get away from him. And as soon as you enter the main hall, you get introduced to these locked doors, which bring back to the puzzle element of the game from the original Resident Evil 1 and 2. And you need to find the keys, and the game is not going to handhold you to tell you where to go. And you got left on your own. You need to craft your ammo, you need to craft your medical supplies in order to keep yourself alive in this mansion. Now at the same time, while you're exploring the mansion and you enjoying the craft in the game, you can feel that the game feels filthy and disgusting with the mold, how it has infected the down, especially when you go down the basement and you can see how mold is rotting this mansion from the down below. And even the creature design looks horrific. You have molded instead of zombies now. That's where games got those elements from Amnesia or Outlast. However, unlike those games where your character feels powerless, Resident Evil 7 perfectly balances from being powerless to powerful. Now while you're doing all of this, while you're exploring the mansion, while you're fighting all these molded creatures, the sound keeps you also on your toes. It makes you feel you scared of walking anywhere because you don't know where an enemy is going to creep up or pop up from. And you're going to hear the sounds coming from different sides of the mansion. Even the doors making noises, the wood creaking noises, and everything else around you while being very quiet scares you. And the only place you felt safe was the save rooms. And there is that soothing sound in the background which comforts you that you are safe for the time being. Now you can reserve your ammo, you can plan what you're going to do moving forward. The lights constantly flickering and there's complete pitch black silence while you walking down the basement. And this is the sort of feeling which a Resident Evil franchise has been missing for a long time. And finally you had a memorable main antagonists in the game in the form of Jack Baker, Marguerite. They're constantly keeping you on your toes because you're scared of them, and they're taunting you while they're constantly chasing you. And as soon as they caught you off guard, you'll be running, you won't be fighting them. And this is where Capcom has reinvented the wheel for the franchise. Now, I'm not saying the game is perfect, there are problems with the game, but Resident Evil 7 was completely different, but at the same time keeping the core values of Resident Evil franchise. You have save rooms with a brand new save theme. You don't have typewriters, but you have tape recorders. You have different weapons which kind of feel familiar. You have ammos, you can craft ammos with the gunpowder. Now Resident Evil 2 Remake is one of the greatest games ever. The same goes for Resident Evil 4 Remake. However, the base for Resident Evil 2 Remake and 4 Remake was already there. All they did was overhaul it and perfect it to make one of the best remakes ever. But that wasn't the case with Resident Evil 7. Remember, Resident Evil 7 was coming off the backlash of Resident Evil 6. And they took risks with Resident Evil 7 because that could have killed or buried the franchise. But no, it actually reinvented the survival horror into the Resident Evil franchise. And that is something Capcom needs to look at. What they did with the Resident Evil 7, they need to apply the same core things onto the next upcoming game. Now Resident Evil 8 has concluded Ethan Winters' story, and Shadows of Rose DLC has concluded the Winters family saga. Now you're going to be back in the same situation again, just like Resident Evil 7 was. And Resident Evil 9 could turn out to be one of the greatest survival horror games out there, but only if they look back at what they did with Resident Evil 7, how they captured the magic with the Resident Evil 7, and they need to apply the same thing on Resident Evil 9 moving forward. We will soon hear announcements on Resident Evil 9, so we'll see what the settings would look like. I think I'll do another video where I'll talk about the settings and the location of Resident Evil 9, which could work, which couldn't work. So that was it for the video. I just wanted to give you my honest opinion around why I think Capcom needs to look back at Resident Evil 7. What are your views? What are your thoughts around Resident Evil 7? Please let me know in the comment section down below. So I'll catch you again with another video. Until then, look after yourself, guys.